Loving Life Creatively with Lizzie Menz, the show that dives into the heart of our community's incredible talent. Join us as we explore the world of creativity through inspiring interviews with local artists, film producers, live demonstrations, and the countless benefits of creating. Every single episode will explore our guests' inspiring stories, celebrate their unique voices and visions, plus showcase their amazing creations. I'm your host, Lizzie Menz, and today we're exploring the incredible artistry behind filmmaking, a craft that merges vision, storytelling, and pure creativity to captivate audiences. Movies have the power to captivate, inspire, and transform, and behind every compelling film is a visionary storyteller. My guest today is an award-winning film and TV director and producer who brings stories to life in ways that mesmerize audiences, whether they're through gripping dramas or pulse-pounding thrillers. Today, we have the absolute privilege of welcoming my super talented friend, Daniel Pico. Besides being an award-winning film director, Daniel also is the founder of Pico Boulevard Entertainment. His ability to weave powerful narratives, shape visually stunning moments, and create immersive storytelling experiences has earned him recognition as a true visionary in the industry. Welcome, Daniel. I'm extremely excited to have you on the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. So yes, it's always a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Yes, always a pleasure as well. Yeah. I think it's been, how long has it been since we've known each other? Probably 5 years?
I think we met in 22.
Was it 22?
I think it was 22 when I moved here, and you were working at the bank.
Yeah,
and,
yes.
I think I met you through Forward Janesville, and then I came to the bank and got an account through you and for my business, and
yes.
when I was getting settled here and getting my business set up. Yeah.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, and I've kind of followed you around now too with, not only with Forward Janesville, but also the movies, and then the Blight International Film Festival, the Blight International Film Festival. Yeah. Yes.
We've known each other through then, and talked and had many a coffee, and talked about life and the arts, and it's always been a pleasure.
Yes.
So.
Oh yeah, and you've been a huge mentor to me. Just kicking off my own business. So I'm so grateful for that as well, because of the connections that you've had and everything that you've done, and just getting that opportunity to, I guess, empower my own self to get out there and do like a show like this and those kinds of things. So, you're always kind of in the back of my head just listening to your story a little bit. So I can't wait to hear more today.
That makes me feel very ominous. Like I'm in the back of your head monitoring you.
Yeah. Good point. I love that. That's wonderful. So, I bet it's probably a little different not being in the production box and being out here with me.
Well, it's a necessity in filmmaking. I think when you're promoting your films and whatnot, that you have a little bit of an experience going in front of the camera and actually talking to the audience and letting them know about the creative process and what you went through. Because I think nowadays, because so many people can do filmmaking, I mean, you can do filmmaking on your phone and whatnot, I think it's so important for the artist to connect with the audience, to expand the experience of not just putting a movie up in front of them and just being like, now enjoy it, thank you very much. Everyone can do that now. They can make a movie, put it on YouTube, and, you know, I think it's the experience of getting to know the artist, I think, is what expands and draws an audience in now. So
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, yes. In all of creative's worlds, I think that when people kind of understand our passion and why we do the things that we do and what do we go through to get to that passion and how do we just let it all unfold is just so magical. And I think that really does grab more of the audience too as well. And now knowing too that you started this whole thing when you were 8.
Oh.
That's awesome.
I have to give a lot of credit to my brother too, because he was the original one who wanted to be a filmmaker, and he is also in his own way. He does his own. He does a lot of online content and things like that now. But when we first started, I mean, it began on Christmas Day in 1988 when my parents, you know, whether it was the best decision or the worst decision ever. They gave us a PXL 2000 Fisher-Price camcorder, which if people don't know, that was like the first toy/camera that was produced, and it recorded onto high bias audio cassette tapes. And you basically had a very small, grainy black and white image, and it recorded sound and picture, and it only had 2 settings, like daytime or interior. He had to switch a little filter on the lens. And my brother and I that morning made our first movie, which was Laser Tag the Film, because we also had a laser tag set for Christmas. So we, and instantly I was sort of put in front of the camera, which is where, because my brother wanted to be the filmmaker, so and telling his little brother what to do came naturally to him. So he I wound up being in front of the camera, and then we would have to set it up on something if we both wanted to be on screen, because he played the villain and I played the good guy, which I thought was really funny, and I instantly was changing his dialogue and expanding the story without his permission. He'd stop the camera and be like, "What are you doing? Why are you changing my dialogue?" And I'm just like, well, it seemed like it needed more. And then, so naturally our, dynamic hasn't changed. So then, and that set us off on being known as the brothers who make movies. Everywhere we went, we would go to summer camp. We'd bring the camera with us. We'd make movies with other kids, and like everybody suddenly wanted to be in front of the camera. And a lot of what we were making were just sort of rip-offs of, other horror films, mostly, or science fiction movies, but mostly horror stuff. We found ourselves a hockey mask, and suddenly next thing you know, one of the kids was deemed to be, Jason Voorhees, and then we had, the Freddy glove. I actually made, at one point, and I think my mom helped me too, which says something about us, a Leatherface mask out of socks. So like from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we cut up old socks, and we had like a wig from another mask that like the latex had disintegrated. So she started stitching the socks together to make a Leatherface mask. So it was made out of socks. And then like gussied up with some like black makeup and some red makeup and stuff, because it was black and white, so you couldn't really tell anyway. But yeah, and then I made a chainsaw in my garage out of like a piece of like molding. So for like the blade, and then just like a rudimentary box, and then like 2 pieces of like molding, and so we'd hold it, and then we just make the sound with our mouth. We come on camera, and go after them, and it was a lot of fun. So
oh my gosh, and I love that your mom also embraced this.
Sure.
That you went that way. That as a mother myself, I would have been going.
Well, she and my dad both embraced it. But my mom, I mean, it's funny. Like, we killed my mother on camera so many times during that time too. It was just very unhealthy psychologically. Where we would put her in a chair. I remember the one specific one I remember is we were making, I think it was a Halloween, because we had a Michael Myers mask, and I think it was a Halloween ripoff, and she was in the back. And we set her up in a chair knitting in the backyard, and he came up and just stabbed her in the back, and then she was like, "Oh!" and fell over with her knitting. So it was very funny.
Oh my gosh! Well, yeah, and for your mom to be a part of this as well. Was your dad in the movies as well?
No, but he loved movies. Both my parents were cinephiles in the sense they both loved movies. My dad really loved movies, and back then everybody kind of knew things about movies.
Sure.
They knew who directors were. They knew that, who, because there wasn't an IMDb, whatever. So if you wanted to know, like, who made a movie, you kind of just had to know, or you had to have books. And,
sure.
And my dad was that way. He loved science fiction. He loved, fantasy and horror and things like that. So he always had a big video library. Like, he was one of the first people that got 2 VCRs. And learned how to copy movies that he would rent. So then we had a library of 3 movies on a tape, and he'd rent stuff and then he'd copy them, and then we always had this. Sorry, Dad,
massive collection.
He's gone now, so the FBI can't come after him. But I
don't mean to laugh that he's gone.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So he had always a library, and so we always had access to that. So. And then he also bought films too, like VHS tapes and stuff. So there was always a library of movies there.
Sure.
And whenever he wanted to watch something, he knew a lot about it. So obviously The Godfather, we'd put that on and he knew everything about the movie. I always think of that joke in Barbie where they're like, oh, we're going to put on The Godfather and then you could talk the whole way through it. That's what I grew up with. My dad do that. I said, when we saw that movie, I said to my wife, I was like, to my credit, I stopped the movie every time I had something to say. So I paused it. But that said, so there was always that, Blade Runner, and he liked science fiction a lot. So there was always that kind of thing around. But one of the things that he bought that really was influential was he'd picked up From Star Wars to Jedi, which was a making of documentary of the trilogy. And it came out right around the time when they released all the movies in 85 or so, 84, 85.
Yeah.
When they all came out on video finally after Return of the Jedi. And it was the making of the trilogy. It was made by Richard Sheckle, who is a film historian and critic. And I watched that more than the movies. I was so obsessed with the process of special effects and model making and miniatures and the filming process and just all of that was so interesting and engaging to me. I couldn't stop watching it. It was so much more interesting than the movies themselves to me. So I think that was one of the first times I got very into the process of making movies. And then later on, the making of The Abyss, which was the James Cameron movie that came out in the late 80s. I think it was 89. Or when they released the Laserdisc, they had a making of documentary on it called Under Pressure that also was about the whole process. And you really got into the process of making that movie. And I show that now to students, when I'm teaching, and doing mentorships or workshops. I like to recommend them watching Under Pressure, because you get such a great insight into what it's like to make a movie one piece at a time. Because that's how it used to be. I mean, it still is to an extent, but movies, when you were doing it and you had to do compositing and you had to film a miniature and it had to be put on a blue screen and then you got to get the background and it's all got to match, all that process, it's all one piece at a time and has to be thought out.
Sure.
And it's so amazing to see when someone has a vision and you have to carry it out. And you have to plan it out, and you have to think logistically of how every piece of it comes together. So there's a fair amount of just pre-planning involved with everything you do. So you have to really think things through. And
I've always loved watching Steven Spielberg, the documentaries of how, all the Star Wars and all the little miniatures and all the things, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's incredible, the forward-thinking process of how much you as a director or producer have to have that constant forward thinking.
Sure.
So do you think that your dad is one of your biggest inspirations, or
I would say so.
Yeah.
From a filmmaking standpoint, he put the camera in our hands. So
sounds like it. Yeah.
And there was always an activity. Things were for a kid like me who was kind of uninterested in physical activity. and, hated sports and didn't want to play baseball and, all that stuff. In the summertime, I'd sit and watch movies and or we'd be making movies, or I'd be playing outside, with my friends or whatnot. But there was always like an element of story. Like, I remember very specifically, I had a couple of friends, and we started playing Evil Dead as like a game, like we were playing, like I'd seen Evil Dead 2 and I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and I'm trying to like explain to the two young girls to play Evil Dead with me, which was so weird when I think about it now. But I must have been very funny to them, but
I bet you were intriguing. Very
more
intriguing.
So,
yes.
more so intriguing.
Yes.
Sort of, but they were, at least they seemed to be down with it. But anyway, we digress.
And your dad's legacy, I mean, is going to live on forever. What a tribute to your dad too. And your mom too, for embracing you and your brother to do this amazing thing.
I think he'd been very proud to see a lot of the successes that I've had recently. I really wish that he'd been around to be able to see things like the Emmy nomination and like the TV show, and then some of the other things that
I believe he's
occurred.
watching. I do. I really do. Yeah, I hear you though. I mean, to have him in the crowd, to be able to say, "Dad, look what we've done. Look what we've accomplished."
Yeah, but my mom still supports, what we're doing. She's rooting for us,
of
still
course.
to succeed, and she follows all the stuff that we do online, and
cool. Yeah. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. Well, tell us about a particular project that you're super proud of.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of films that I've done that I've had. There's always something, they're all like your children, in some way,
I suppose.
You give birth to them. They're a little imperfect, but you love them anyway, But no, but there have been a couple. One of the big ones that still holds a place in my heart was my first feature film that I did in 2007, called Farewell Darkness, and that was a story of a veteran who comes home from Iraq and has a personal mission to get revenge on a parent that abused him and his mother. And so it's kind of a thriller, a drama, but it has the added piece of like he has post-traumatic stress disorder, and he comes home and he also has all of those years of abuse and learning behaviors from that. So he has like a girlfriend he treats the exact same way that his dad treated his mother, and but trying to go on this very short journey of self-discovery, of figuring out who he is and whether or not he's going to do this horrible thing and basically end his life before he gets a chance to live again. And so that was a story we did. We shot it in Chicago and Arizona, and it was a great film. The experience of making it was so personal, and we had a very small crew and cast, and everybody really like went well above and beyond, and they really all thought we were doing something really, really profound. Whether or not the movie came out or not, it has its great moments, it has some flaws, whatever, but the process of making it was really, really special. We shot it in Chicago for like 23 days. And then we gathered into a van and went out to Arizona and shot all the scenes that took place in Iraq out there on the back lot.
Sure.
So all the crew and cast packed into one van and drove overnight to Arizona. And then we shot for 2 days and then came back. And those scenes are really spectacular. Those came out really, really good. There's a certain level of authenticity to them. And then they're very emotional and very exciting, and we had lots of squibs and which are little explosives and things like that, and we had explosions, and all of the costumes were authentic, and it was very cool. It was a very neat experience to go down there and have something that big, and then have 2 days to kind of pull it all off. That was a really amazing experience.
I bet. Did you write it then too?
I co-wrote it. Most of the film was written by a writer named Roy Maurer, who I went to film school with. I came in at the end and did rewrites on it because he just wasn't available. He was living in Washington, D.C. He had become a journalist, so he was writing for a newspaper out there. And there were things that I felt like we could say more about in there, so that was it was just revising it. But the core story was was Roy's from the beginning. I remember he came up with the story back in, I want to say it was 2005 or 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2004, 2005. We had met up in Los Angeles when he was living out there. I was there shooting a making of documentary for another filmmaker, and we sat down at Bob's Big Boy for breakfast. And I said, I really want to make a feature film, and but I'm having struggling trying to find a story that I really connect with. And his response was, well, I got something. And he started telling me this sort of tale of this young soldier who comes home, and I said, if you write that, I'll go make it. And then, later on, I was like, well, I guess, 2006 script showed up, and I said, do I want to do this? I was like, this is harsh stuff, but I think I could pull it off and we did it, the whole film, for $36,000, like the entire movie. So it was, a very ambitious movie, but from that standpoint, it was an enormous achievement. We were able to do. But I've always been really good at making deals and negotiating with people and being creative. So we were able to get things like Union Station in Chicago. Like I was able to film there. We had a lot of rules that we had to follow, but they let me do it for a very small fee. And at the time, independent film wasn't what it is now, where there's a movie that's considered independent now is like a $12 million movie.
Really?
we were so small at the time that we showed up, and I just had a cart with a camera on it and a couple of people, and they're like, yeah, you shoot, just don't get in anybody's way. And so I had all of like the grandeur of Union Station in the opening of the picture, so it was very exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that
Yeah,
story.
sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. So what challenges have you faced in your film directing journey?
Every filmmaker faces challenges of some kind. The industry usually doesn't just open its doors and just say, welcome, let's give you some money and see what you can do, kid. I've struggled personally and professionally throughout, most of my years. I was very good at stepping on my own toes for a long time in my life. But thankfully, I've grown and matured, and that's been helpful. But in terms of professional obstacles, finding money and figuring out an original story, all those are things that you face when you're trying to do mostly independent films. I've never really worked in a studio system. That's never been something I was really all that interested in. But at the same time, if Marvel called tomorrow, I'd definitely take the call.
Right.
But that said, in terms of just figuring out what to make a movie about, I think is always the biggest struggle, is to try and do something original and interesting that's not derivative of something else, because it's so easy to, as much as I love Quentin Tarantino's films, his love of other films tends to influence what he's doing sometimes. Kill Bill is an homage to so much of the exploitation cinema that he grew up watching, and a lot of other filmmakers sort of took that inspiration and are like, oh, I'll just recreate the films that I loved as a child. And I try not to do that. I try to find original stories and to try and have something to say by doing them too. So that's always the challenge. And also just getting past, writer's block and, other, I have ADD really bad. So it's like sitting down and focusing on a piece of writing. A friend of mine said, people with ADD, we're great in a pinch. When there's very little time, we're focused and we're ready and we're the go-to people. But when you've got all this time in the world, it's so let me watch this YouTube video first, and then, I'll go make some breakfast, and then, oh, look, it's already time for me to take the dogs out, and, and then no writing gets done.
You're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Total.
Yeah.
Total. So I guess a great segue. What does keep you motivated and inspires you, and how do you manage your time? I know you're so busy as well.
I think one of the important things is to never take for granted that I get to do this for a living. And when you do that, you find yourself in quite a pickle. I have to continually remind myself, no matter what I'm working on, I get to do this for a living, and it's the greatest job in the world to me. I love this. This is making movies is a real privilege, and it's something that I try not to forget.
That's a very profound statement, because having that gratitude and knowing that you get to do your dream, so many people are out there still trying to figure out their dreams. And then when you do find it, I agree with you. You don't never want to let that go, that gratitude that you do get to. So great. That's a profound statement.
I try.
Yeah. I think you just do. So who are some of your biggest influencers and mentors in the industry?
I've had a lot of mentors in my life. I mean, obviously, like my father and his love of movies was sort of where it started.
I keep thinking of Super 8. I had to just tell you that. I was going to tell you that earlier. But I can just see you and your friends and your brother all trying to make this movie, and the aliens come, and
that movie's pretty accurate. Except we just didn't have film on the camera.
Right.
We never used film at the time, but yeah, no, I think it was. It kind of started there. My father, my mother, my brother. As a family, because like for us, movies were the thing that we did. Like Saturdays were like, okay, that was the day we went to the movies. It was usually a dollar theater because my father was very frugal. But I now having stepkids of my own and we want to go to the movies. It's like, oh my goodness, the cost. So like I started thinking back. I'd be like, man, I missed the dollar theaters. My father was onto something.
Totally.
But no, but yeah, like that was like movies were always sort of like a coming together for the family. And for then later on when I started making movies, I had there was a teacher in. A couple of teachers I had in high school that were very influential. Dennis Haig, who was a social studies teacher that I had. He was a big movie lover, and I remember he was always very encouraging. Eric Hammerstrom, who was one of the tech teachers that I had, who was one of the first people who started showing us how to edit and use the reel-to-reel editing for video and how to use the cameras, like the cameras the school had. And then he always, for whatever reason, he let me just take the cameras and edit my projects and just do whatever I wanted pretty much in the class. Like it was, so I made an adaptation of The Telltale Heart and I got credit for it, and I was just kind of doing it for me. But then they were just like, well, you're not here doing the news stuff with us, so you should probably get credit for that. And then later on, Ron Pitts, who was a documentarian, was my first teacher at Columbia College in Chicago, where I wound up doing my undergrad. And he was a documentarian. He had shot a lot of footage of Ali when he went to Zambia, or was Zaire, when he went to Zaire for the George Foreman fight. So the documentary When We Were Kings, a lot of that footage is his. Because he was a documentarian. He was following Muhammad Ali around, and he had done commercials and things like that. He had trained other filmmakers who went on to do films. Like one of his mentorees, or someone he mentored, was Andrew Davis, who wound up making The Fugitive and a number of other films. Code of Silence with Chuck Norris and other stuff like that. But he had mentored a lot of other filmmakers, really talented people. And he taught our Tech 1 class. So he was the first one who came in with just so much enthusiasm and energy for teaching us how to tell a story. And I got a lot from him in that. And he really liked the little 1-minute movie that I made. He was very very supportive of it. And even years later, when I would talk to him, he goes, I still remember your movie. He passed away just a few years ago. But I would always drop in and see him and have a great conversation with him about that. And he'd always remember that first film I made all the way up to him. And I'd show him new things I made. And he was always like, baby, you got to talk, you got to talk to this person, and he was always a really cool cat. And then, later on, there were people like Kathleen Davidson, who was a filmmaker that I was really, or I am close friends with. And she was a great mentor, and her partner at the time, Anthony Domino, who was the first assistant director, who I worked with on a lot of commercials. He taught me a lot about being an assistant director, and that was another career path I had at one point, where I was working as a first assistant director on feature films, and working with a lot of different filmmakers, and that was a cool experience. That was really got to see how other people did it for a while, and take from them what they had, and yeah, there was just there's so many. The director of photography that I work with all the time, who I went to film school with, I learn a lot from all the time. Jeffrey Silverberg, who is my cinematographer to this day, and he shoots a lot of the films that we do here in Janesville. He flies in from Los Angeles to shoot for us here. Wow. And yeah, so
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I love listening to that too, because all of us creatives, we kind of all of a sudden cultivate this community of creatives that are all, because we always know we're not the smartest one in the room, right?
Sure.
So we need all of us together, and we're just to have that open-mindedness and to be able to keep learning and keep growing, and for your mentor to always remember that 1 minute film that you did.
Yeah.
I mean, what a compliment. What a
Sure.
huge compliment,
And it
just boosts you. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, just boosts your confidence so much. Kind of how you talked earlier about, we're our own worst critic. But having those people in your box, saying, no, I want you to go do this. Go do this. You're amazing at it. We need those folks,
Yeah, and there are so many more. Like, I
bet.
feel bad that I can't remember everybody now, because they're, here's an example, like Anthony Domino, who, he works for, huge talent now. I mean, like, I can't even name who he actually works for. But I asked him at one point, because when I moved to Los Angeles in 2008, at the end of 2008, 2009, I moved there. I asked him at a point, because the only reason I had, here's an example. Kathleen and him were married at the time, and I said to her, I said, yeah, I'm really struggling for work. She's like, well, my husband's an assistant director, he can hire you. And I said, oh, that'd be great. It'd be great just to get on sets and meet people as a production assistant. And apparently she told him, either you hire Daniel or I divorce you.
Oh,
so
that's profound.
That's a big statement of faith in me. And Anthony later told me, I asked him at one point, I said, Anthony, is there anything I could do to pay you guys back? Because the only reason I'm, employed right now is because you keep bringing me on set. And he said, Daniel, he's like, I thought for a while, I just bring you on set and you'd screw up and then I could get rid of you. But he's like, you really made yourself part of the team. So I have to, accept that you'll be around. And he said, but he's like, there's nothing you could really do for us. He's like, just pay it back to the next person and help somebody else get into the industry and help someone else and mentor somebody else. And so I took that really to heart. And ever since then, I've made it a point to mentor other young filmmakers and make sure that I share my experience with them. I don't give advice. I try to share experience. So they know that there is an actual outcome and not just me, whistling Dixie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love that, and great segue too, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, how do you inspire others who want to be film producers, writers? I mean, all the things that come into a movie. What would be the best advice that you could give someone?
I think the best advice I can give to young filmmakers is just to go make a movie. Don't wait for permission. The tools have never been more available than they are now. Every one of us has a phone, and that phone's got a camera, and it shoots high quality video and audio, and you can get programs that'll help you control the image more than what's on there if you really want to, and you can make a film there, and you can get editing programs for your phone or your laptop or whatever that are free online. There's a lot of things that you can do to make a movie, and that's because Francis Ford Coppola started talking about this, I think, in the early 90s. I heard him say in an interview in the making of, another making of movie, Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. And at the end of that, he ends on the note of, he's like, I want filmmaking to finally become an art form, because there's this idea of professionalism that's involved with everything that we do. And he's like, I'm waiting for these new video cameras that are coming out, you know, to inspire like a young girl in Cleveland to make a movie in her backyard, and it'll be really beautiful, because, you know, it'll then finally become an art form, and we can do away with the idea of like professionalism. And I think to a certain extent, the democratization, I don't know if that's a correct actual word, but
I think it should be.
It should be,
yes.
of filmmaking has become, it's here. Anybody can make a movie now. So it truly is an art form in that sense. Anyone can do it. You know, it's like the idea of like someone having to wait for a famous artist to paint a painting so they can put it in a museum, and then we have to go see it. Now everybody can, you know, afford the watercolors, you know, or the oil paints or whatever it is they're using. You know, anybody can create, you know, a drawing or a painting. All you need is, you know, charcoal from a fire in a cave wall, and you've got art, you know, to a certain extent. And I think filmmaking has kind of gone down that same path where anybody can do it. You know, now it becomes, you know, a level of like experience and skill, and whether or not people have an inherent nature to tell stories and understand human emotions and move people. So I think that the time, if you're looking to get into making movies, is now because like I said, the tools are available, but look to others, because now also information about how to do this has never been more readily available. You can go on YouTube and you can find, you know, 5,000 videos about filmmaking, you know, that are on there on every topic, every aspect of it, from cinematography to editing to directing to screenwriting, everything, you know, production management, if that's your thing. It's all there available, ready to be absorbed if you're interested and willing to do that deep dive. In terms of, you know, I say a great way to force yourself to finish something is, there's a lot of filmmaking contests now that are that you can do. I do a lot of the 48-hour film project work because those are, you know, it forces you to finish. You know, you got 48 hours. You know, you can do away with the, you know, going to walk the dog and make yourself breakfast and all that. All that goes out the window because you've only got 48 hours. And, you know, if you want it to qualify, so you're forced to get something done. And you know, because some people it can take years, you know, for someone to get it together enough to finish a movie. And then, you know, at the end of it, then it's really disheartening if it doesn't perform the way you want it. You know, I try to be less precious. And that's a great piece of advice I give to all filmmakers when they're starting out. Don't be precious. Not everything is going to be the movie that Steven Spielberg's going to see. And suddenly, you're on your way to, you know, fame and, you know,
Marvel.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're on your way to Marvel or,
yes.
you know, the annals of film history,
right.
You know, at the Academy. No, you're, you know, don't be precious. Just do work, make movies, take risks, find out what works. You know, you learn as much from making a mistake than you do from getting everything right, you know. So learn from your mistakes and be honest with yourself about, you know, what works and what doesn't, you know.
Yes, sure.
You know, have some perspective on the work you actually do. You know, I see a lot of films that, you know, the filmmakers don't have any perspective on what they've actually made. And then they put it out there and then they're disappointed when it doesn't get the response that they want because they think themselves, well, I made it, so it should be perfect. It's amazing. You know, isn't it amazing? I worked so hard on this. And then the reality is, it's like the audience doesn't know that. They're not supposed to know that. They're just supposed to lose themselves in the world that you create and the story that you're telling them and just absorb it. And then afterwards, you know, they walk away with something, or hopefully if it stays with them.
Sure.
You know, so get perspective on your work. You know, really know what you've created and be honest with yourself if it's flawed. You know, but don't be so scared to put everything on the shelf and just never share it with anybody. It's okay to get feedback that isn't positive because you learn something from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I talk with other artists about that too, that we have all this bunch of art I have a bunch of art in my basement that no one sees because I think, ooh, you know, that was the beginning. So same thing with films, and that was one of the biggest profound things. And I love that. Don't be precious. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's advice that has helped me. You know, I've done, since I moved to Janesville in 2021, and I got involved in the 48-hour film project here. That for just that alone, I've done, I think, 11 films in the last 3 years.
11?
Yeah, 11 short films. Then I also did Razor, the TV show, which, was another project that, means a lot to me because that's the first sort of like actual studio financed, small studio, but a studio financed film that I co-wrote and directed part of, and I was a co-producer on and got to work in the editing process on it. And all the years of experience that I had really came to culminated in that film because I brought a lot of what I'd learned into that process, and it was such a crazy haphazard kind of production in terms of like trying to do this enormous science fiction TV show on a very small budget, and being able but also being able to have access to all the tools and experiences that we've had over the years, and we were able to put something together that got nominated for a Primetime Emmy. And we were a contender for a Primetime Emmy for the show itself, but Mina Savari, who's from American Beauty and Spun and a lot of other movies, and American Pie, she got nominated for a Primetime Emmy for her performance in the show.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, so hang tight. We're going to segue over into a little bit different part of the show, and then we're going to come back, and then let's talk more about these amazing movies that you have coming up, and you can talk about how we'll find you and how our world out there can check all of your movies out on YouTube and the trailers and all the good stuff. So hang on just a sec, Daniel, and thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. All right, so next, let's dive a bit more into what is the creative force behind the screen. Filmmaking is more than cameras rolling and actors delivering lines. It is the purest expression of creativity, a harmonious blend of imagination, storytelling, and artistry that turns ideas into unforgettable cinematic experiences. At its core, writing a film is about weaving emotions into words, breathing life into characters, and sculpting a world that captivates. A screenwriter doesn't just put pen to paper, they paint with dialogue, shaping moments that resonate long after the credits roll. They envision the laughter, the tears, the twists, and keep the audiences on the edge of their seats, crafting scenes that make us feel deeply, truly, and really unexpectedly. Then comes the director, the master orchestra of vision. With an artist's eye, they bring the script to life, transforming words into movement, light, and sound. Every frame, every shadow, every pause has purpose. The director's creativity doesn't just dictate what we see, it determines how we feel. Whether through sweeping photography, bold color choices, or the perfect silence before a climax, they sculpt emotions like clay, shaping raw energy into breathtaking storytelling. Filmmaking is an exploration of human emotion, a symphony of voices and visions coming together to create something larger than life. It is a testament to the limitless power of imagination, proving that with creativity, really anything is truly possible.
So how did your night start?
We were hanging out at the dorm.
Okay, how many fingers are we holding?
Okay, so I don't understand. How do you use the cards to do that?
I'll show you the cards again, Mom.
Hey, Ethan, you need to sit back down.
I don't remember who was driving the car.
All your blood samples tested twice the legal limit.
I remember asking where my son was.
It wasn't our fault. She swerved into our lane.
I really want to help you, but I just don't remember.
So Daniel, we're going to switch back to you, and let's have you share a little bit about some of these amazing films that you've directed and produced and just all the things. So please, take it away.
Recently we completed a short film for the 48-hour film project called Witch Hunt, which has been nominated for some awards. We'll find out tomorrow night, actually, how we do at the award ceremony up in Madison. We are in the process of getting, I'll be also producing a short film out in Los Angeles. I leave in a week for that. And that's a small family film about a Christmas gathering that goes awry. And I'm not directing that film, I'm just producing it. Melinda Hale, who's a really talented director and performer, who I've worked with for a number of years, she'll be directing it, and so I'm going out there to support her. And putting that film together. It's called Au Gratin, so it's about food and family. And then when I come back, I'll be working on some editorial projects for some documentaries, and then I'll be directing a feature that'll be shot here in Janesville and Beloit in late August and early September called Solstice. That's kind of a Stephen King style horror film about a woman who finds a trinket at a estate sale, that allows her to begin to de-age, and but it sucks the energy out of other people in order for her to get younger, and everybody in the town starts to get sick and starts dying off. And then it wants more, so it starts having her kill people in order to get the energy. So it's about sort of that quest for eternal youth and that fear of death, and when you're not willing to give up and you want more, So it plays on human greed and how everyone gets brought down by this little trinket. So So it's a little fun. It's kind of a fable a little bit, so we're looking forward to shooting that. I'll be drawing a lot from the community. So anybody who's watching, if you want to get involved, we need help because we don't have any money.
Maybe that's what I need to do, is be on a horror flick, and then I'll get over my fear of horror movies.
I think it'll be fun. Actually, we should come here. We should have seen here, where you're meeting with somebody, and then they start like breaking down and like bleeding in front of you, and then you could just be like horrified, and and that way you can get over your fear of horror by being in a horror film. Because I always tell my wife when she's scared, of something we're watching, because my wife will run out of the room and then watch from the dining room whenever I'm watching a horror film. And so she can't really handle it either. But I always try to remind her, I'm like, honey, just remember, it's all make-believe. Like, just off camera, when there's like the scary monster, there's a grip standing on a ladder with his butt crack hanging out. So just always remember that.
There's always a humanness part of
it.
Yeah.
There's just off camera, there's a production assistant eating a Twizzler. So like just remember those things. But in any case, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So no, I'm a big So I have a lot of things that we're trying to do. Razor, which was the TV show that we did, that's actually being sold now as a feature film. We're in the process of getting a distribution deal with that. So that's an ongoing process. And then David Bianchi, who's my producing partner on that and co-writer, and we've been working together now for more than a decade. On various projects, almost 2 decades now. We've been working together. We're trying to get maybe a second season or a second feature out of that. And there's some film work that we're doing that's in development right now with a Korean company. So there's a lot of things that are kind of in the works. You know, that's the thing with the film industry, is that there's always things in the works. There's always things in development. And then when the money shows up, you scramble to put it all together. And that's, you know, how it is. But the immediate thing that we're looking forward to is Solstice. That's going to be really exciting. I haven't directed a feature film since 2007. So I've been doing shorts and music videos and things like that in between, and then working on other people's movies for the last couple decades. So I'm really looking forward to that and putting it together, you know, very guerrilla style, you know, since we don't have a lot of money, but, you know, running around and filming things and, you know, seeing what resources we can, you know, scrounge together. And I've been in contact with a lot of the other sort of filmmakers in the state, and I've been talking to Michael Keeney, who's one of the, Catherine Thompson and Michael Keeney are the two, Catherine Gonzalez Thompson, sorry, and Michael Keeney are two of the city producers for the state of Wisconsin for the 48-Hour Film Project, and they're such great supporters of independent film here, and so I've been in contact with them to sort of bring the tribes together to sort of like consolidate a lot of the talent in the state in order to kind of bring the movie to fruition, because we really want to show how much talent there is right now in the state of Wisconsin. There's just such a competitive state to be working in film in right now, and you know, we're really hopeful that the state will get the tax incentive to try and bring more work here and create more opportunities for us. The bill is still, I think, being debated whether or not it'll be you know, passed by the state legislature, and I'm pretty sure the governor will sign it, but if it does, but it's a whole process of trying to build an industry here right now where there just isn't one. So we're, you know, but there are filmmakers here, and we are doing some really incredible work.
That's wonderful, Daniel. Well, and just even when you came here back in 2021, right? When you came back here in 2021, when I met you in 22, I had never met a filmmaker, didn't even know that existed except for JATV. I knew of JATV, but to know that you are a part of that, and you're also a catalyst to get all of the filmmakers together and be a part of the state of Wisconsin, you know, that's pretty profound as well. Like, you know, you found your community, that big community of people. So that's awesome. And today, instead of having a little creative session, what we're going to do is, you know, list all of your YouTube trailers of some of your movies, you know, during that. So I encourage all of you to go in and watch those trailers. Daniel's going to also give us his website and other ways that we can get, you know, you can find all of the information about him and the other amazing things that you've done throughout the years, and more of your story too, because we could probably sit here and talk for 10 hours, I have a feeling, to cover it all, right?
Yeah. Yes. I haven't brought up my wife, who, you know,
yes.
The reason I moved here was, you know, my wife, Nicole, lives here with my now stepkids, and that was the reason I wound up coming to Janesville, was because I was living in Los Angeles, and we started dating. We've known each other since we were in high school, so we had been friends for 26 years, and then when we started dating online, we said, you know, what I've got to be here in order for us to be able to try and see it through. So I said, okay, I'll pack it up in LA and move here, and you know, this has now been my home now for 4 years. So it's been a really exciting time to be here and to be kind of at this moment of a little film renaissance here in Wisconsin. Has been really exciting to see all the filmmakers. I mean, obviously there were lots of filmmakers working here before I got here, but it just feels like right now there's a lot of really amazing work and a lot of energy behind developing that. So I think it's really great to be here at the forefront.
Yeah, amazing too, and for you to get to work with Stephen Pickering too, because you know I'd known Stephen for years too, but as far as making a movie and a series and the TV show, and even just you talking about the cinema versus a movie versus a series on a TV show and HBO, and just how all of that, I guess, how each of them are a little different. It didn't even occur to me.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, Stephen and Cameron Pickering are great filmmakers too.
They
do wonderful work, and they're such a big part of this community. It's a real honor to be able to work with them on some of the projects they're doing as an editor mostly. And that's been really exciting and really fun collaboration.
Yeah, I bet that's really cool. Yeah, and right in your backyard, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, they're down the hall.
They are down the hall.
They're down the hall from me.
Yeah, right from where your office is. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Daniel, is there anything else that you would like to share with the world?
I think there's this feeling that the film industry is somehow changing, and our consumption of media is changing, I think, over the years. And right now, it feels like there's this sort of sense of hopelessness in the film industry a little bit, that because of the business side of things isn't doing well. That people aren't just not watching movies. And I'd like to say, just like, people are still consuming movies. They're still consuming media. They're just changing the way they consume it. And I hope that the film industry continues to learn and change the way in which it presents that media, so that it can get the business side together, so that we can all get back to work.
Yeah, sure. Keep on that evolution.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great segment too. We got to keep it alive. We have to keep it alive.
Yeah.
That's always been my favorite thing to do with my family is Friday nights. Friday nights was always pizza and movie night. Always has been and always will be. And I agree with you. I think there's so many people can't wait for movies to come to the theater. Still will go to theater. I realize we can see it on HBO and all the things nowadays, but we're definitely out there. So yeah, I'm on your side for that reason. Yeah, most definitely.
And go for people to go back to the theaters and remember what it was like to share an experience with other people. Movies are better shared. Comedies are funnier. Scary films are scarier. Dramas, you feel more deeply when you're sharing it with other people. We are herd animals at our core, and we want to do things together. And I think that it's really important for us to get back to that idea of sharing experiences together as a community. And I think that that's something that I think we should all be seeking to promote and to do more of, because we've become, since the pandemic, I think, very insular and we've all pulled back from group activities, and I think that it would be great to start to see people coming back to theaters and experiencing things together, and remembering what it's like to experience an emotional experience together.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we have to wrap it up now.
Yeah.
Which I could talk to you for 10 more hours, Daniel. Thank you so very much for being here today. It's really been inspirational, and I have learned a ton, and I know everybody else out there is going to as well. So here's to the screenwriters who dream up impossible stories and the directors who make them a reality. Here's to creativity, bold and boundless, and the magic it brings to the silver screen. Thank you for joining us on Loving Life Creatively today. We hope you've been inspired by the incredible talent and stories of our local creatives. It always truly is an honor sharing this time with you. Creating is an exhilarating escape that quiets the mind and fuels positivity. When you dive into the creative process, it's like flipping a switch that drowns out the noise and fills you with a vibrant energy. Every brushstroke, word, or note is a step towards a joyful accomplishment, making the world brighter and your spirit always a little lighter. Creating is truly for everyone. I'm going to tell you all, just keep creating, keep inspiring, and keep loving life creatively. Until next time.